Hi guys, welcome back to another episode. My name's Kevin Hammond. Let's get straight to it. So it's been a while since I've had one of these episodes, and the reason for that is actually that we've had some really bad news lately in South Africa with proposed changes to our gun laws. They're basically trying to make it almost impossible for you to own a gun, and as a prepper that kind of puts a limitation on some of the things I can do. But we are fighting this law, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that before I go on to the topic of today's video. So basically, if you don't know, the Firearms Control Amendment Bill was released in May. It's a terrible bill. It wants to take away self-defense for a reason to own a firearm. It wants to limit a whole bunch of firearm-related activities. It wants to ban reloading. And if it is ever enacted, it will be a terrible, terrible thing that will result in many people losing their lives. So, guys, if you haven't already objected to this bill, look down in the summary below, click on the Dear South Africa link, and object to this horrendous bill. But that's not what today's topic is about. Let's talk about the recent riots that we've had here in South Africa, the so-called Zuma Riots. I'm not going to go into why the riots happened or speak about anything like that. I just want to talk about the 10 lessons I've learned as a prepper from the Zuma Riots. So let's get straight to it. So guys, if you haven't seen my channel before, please like and subscribe. That helps me grow, that helps me get out there on the search engines, and it just helps me build this channel and build the prepper community in South Africa. So lesson number one that I learned from the Zuma Riots is that they can happen unexpectedly. In South Africa, we do have these occasional outbursts of violence, whether it's xenophobia, looting, taxi violence, political violence. The society we live in sort of builds with pressure, and then there's like a release, an explosion of pressure, and generally there is violence. I did not see this coming at all. We were all joking about Jacob Zuma being imprisoned, and it was all fun and games, and we all thought, okay, this is it. Law and order has shown that it's in control, the courts are in control, and then a few days later, all hell broke loose. So these things can happen really quickly. I follow the news quite carefully. I consider myself quite well informed, but I didn't see this coming at all. The people were warning about violence, but people always make threats, and sometimes they're empty threats. I don't know how this all came together, but it came together very quickly and very unexpectedly. So that was the first lesson I learned, is that I'm not going to have time that I think I'm going to have necessarily to make the preparations that I would like to make. Things can just deteriorate in a number of 2 or 3 days. It looks like you can't even recognize the country you're in, you can't even recognize society. It goes from like a suburban life to like Mad Max overnight. So the first lesson, guys, this can happen very quickly, very unexpectedly, so you got to be prepared. Lesson number 2 that I learned is something that I had known, but it's something that was reinforced with all these Zuma riots, and that is the problem of the roads being blocked. Excuse me. Natal and a lot of the places in Durban are connected to the rest of South Africa by 1 or 2 national highways, and these national highways pass through long stretches where the only inhabitants are people in rural areas, many of them who are poor, many of them who would be sort of pro-Zuma, pro-looting. So within a day or two, all the cities and the towns and the suburbs in Natal were basically cut off from the rest of the country. The roads were blocked, the N3 was blocked, trucks were burnt out on these national highways, rocks were put in the roads, rocks were thrown at trucks. So that just reinforced to me that the notion that you're going to be able to travel long distances in a shit hits the fan situation is largely fantasy, and with that, whilst I'm not going into the whole thing about never bug out, don't always bug in, protect your ground, because everyone's situation is different. I stay on a farm That's a family farm, so I've got a lot invested in protecting this property. If you're renting somewhere in the city and it's someone else's property, maybe you don't feel like putting your neck on the line for your landlord's property that you, at the end of the day, you're going to move out at the end of the year. So each person must decide what their prep strategy is. But just bear in mind how difficult it can be to travel long distances in a shit-it's-the-fan situation with riots like this, because the roads will be blocked. South Africans are very good at blocking roads. Whether it's burning tires, whether it's rocks, whether it's a peloton of cyclists, we know how to block roads. So, once again, that reinforces with me the notion that you need to bunker in rather than bug out. But like I say, that doesn't apply to everyone. If you live in Kimberley and you can easily get into the Karoo and you're renting, then maybe bugging out works for you. You need to work up with your own strategy. But national roads, main roads, and the roads connecting towns are very easy to block. A couple of tires, set them on fire, a couple of rocks, and you can't get where you want to go. And then you're stuck. So bear that in mind. That was lesson number 2. So lesson number 3 is bugging in rather than bugging out, or rather bunkering in, as they say, because you're not bugging. Bugging is to like freak out and bug out. So this has always been my strategy, but it was reinforced during this recent unrest. We saw within the first 2 or 3 days, the police were not doing anything. There was complete breakdown of law and order. And it seemed like it was going to grow exponentially. Like the looting was twice as big on the second day than it was on the first day. And it looked like it was going to be 4 times as big on the third day and just grow and just basically tear the country apart. And every neighborhood was going to be overrun. And it was like there was a real sense of palpable fear in the community. Even here in Gauteng, in Randfontein where I live, people were freaking out. So the thing that stopped all of this looting, the thing that's like turned the momentum, turned the tide on the looters, was that people stood up for themselves. Communities came together, they manned the important entry points into their neighborhoods, and they stopped the looters from just running rampant. Because once the looters thought that, okay, it's like there's no rules, nothing, no laws apply, then it's just a case of, well, when the malls are done, we're done looting the malls, we'll go to the rich neighborhoods and loot there. The difference being that the malls only have mall security at the start. In the rich neighborhoods, the people came out and defended their neighborhoods. In South Africa, people always talk about our high walls, our high fences, electric fences, all the spikes. And that's largely based on crime. You don't want criminals to be able to break into your neighborhood, but those same walls and fences and spikes will apply in a riot situation. So I think, we live in a very fortified country. Our suburbs are very much fortified against crime, with a little bit of modification, filling in a few gaps here and there with some wire. You can fortify your neighborhood so that people can't get in and out easily. And that's a lot better than trying to run away and try and find somewhere safe when all the roads are blocked and you don't know, what's out there. Even if the road's not blocked, you're a person on your own, driving a car, and all of a sudden, like, these people appear from nowhere, surround your car, and then, you're not really going to be bugging out. You're going to be dying, basically. So, number 3, guys, really think about bunkering in. Think about using the fortified, high-tech criminal anti-crime measures that we've implemented over the years as a way of keeping your community safe from rioters, from looters. It's not like in America where there's no fences between the different houses and guys can just run rampant. There's walls, there's spikes. If you block off the entrance to your town or to your suburb and you guys do patrols, you're much stronger than trying to get out and find somewhere safe. Which is number 4, guys. The lesson number 4 is basically an extension of lesson number 3. Protect your neighborhood. This has always been my strategy, but even this is a lesson I learned, is that means your neighborhood, not just your own home. I might be all puffed up and say, I'll protect my farm, this is my family farm, but I would kind of never thought like I would have to protect somebody else's property. And I was always like, why? You know, they're not going to protect my property. Why must I protect theirs? But this event, these riots showed us that you have to stand up to protect your town, because you buy food at that supermarket. You know, that's where you get your food. If that supermarket is burnt, and then, you know, especially like in a town like Randfontein, most of our shops run along one main road. Rioters came through that main road and burnt everything. Where do we get food? Then everybody rushes for the outlying places, and they soon run out. So if you don't protect your neighborhood, if you don't protect the infrastructure within your neighborhood, the shopping, the shops, the malls, the electric infrastructure, all those things, if you just say, well, I'm going to protect my home and fuck everybody else, if everyone says that and the looters run rampant, you will experience some severe shortages and your town will be overrun. This is your town. It's not somebody else's town. This is all about showing people strength. There's not much difference between ourselves and our ancestors. And people understand, if you show strength, if you stand up for yourself, they're going to think twice about looting that area. If you protect a shop, you protect a factory, they're only going to loot that factory if they have the advantage of numbers and if they're very dedicated. Whereas if no one's protecting it, a small group of 5 people can burn down and loot a factory or any other infrastructure that may be really important for your town. So number 4, guys, you need to protect your neighborhood. And lesson number 5, guys, this is an extension once again, is that roadblocks work both ways. I've talked about how difficult it can be to bug out in a situation like this. But we've also seen that the roadblocks on your communities, on the entrance of your communities, do a lot with keeping your communities safe. If large bodies of looters can't get into your communities, it really lessens the risk that your community faces. So we've seen how effective roadblocks have been in the various communities around Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal, and in various areas of Gauteng. And this is something that you need to think of, you know. Yes, if you go out of your neighborhood, you may run into enemy roadblocks, but within your neighborhood, the roadblocks will be keeping your neighborhood safe. But with that being said, roadblocks can be really dangerous. So you need to worry, you need to watch yourself and not get carried away, not commit acts of violence that are not necessary, especially when someone is not a threat. You know, you can be very angry about the damage that's been caused, but you can't go ahead and racially profile people and say, you people burnt this, we're going to kill you, when you don't even know if that person was involved. And even if they were, in this day and age, you can't just punish someone extrajudicially, not at this point, you know. This is not Mad Max. We haven't completely lost the state. So you have to think, even if I do this and I feel better for 5 minutes, I enacted some punishment on this person, that could end up putting you in jail for the rest of your life. And at the same time, it may be the wrong person, or it may be completely out of proportion. You may not know all the situation. So just, if you're at a roadblock, be smart, be safe, apprehend the people, and then hand them over to the law authorities, if there are any authorities. Otherwise, just ask them questions. I don't mean torture them and interrogate them, but you need to understand how they got there. Forget about why they're looting. No one cares why they're looting. Just understand how they're looting. How did you get here? Who told you to come here? How did you organize? Why are there so many people coming? And how did they all know to come at the same time? If you want to ask someone some questions at a roadblock, these are the questions you ask them if they are looters. But don't be don't be an asshole at a roadblock. Don't introduce racial elements in that. And just think of the roadblock as an advantage and use it to protect your community. Which brings us to lesson number 6. Everything will be filmed. So if you are at a roadblock, if you do take part in community watch operations, patrols, whatever you may call it, understand that this is 2021 and that everyone has a camera. So whatever you do will be filmed, and bear that in mind at all times, because it may, even if you act in the right, if someone edits a scene of you beating somebody up and they leave out the part where that person was caught with stolen goods, it just looks like you beating somebody up. So always bear in mind that you're going to be filmed, and whatever you're doing, be prepared that you'll do it in camera. So if you are planning to break the law, just remember that chances are you will be filmed breaking the law, and then it will come back to bite you because there will be evidence against you. So whatever you're doing, be prepared to do it on camera, and if you wouldn't do it on camera, if you wouldn't do it in front of a camera, don't do it. So lesson number 7, guys, that I learned of this whole thing is that non-lethal weapons are really essential. You know, we may have guns, we may practice with our guns and really talk about guns all the time, but in a situation like this with looters, there's always this question of, can I use lethal force to protect property? And no one can really give you a 100% straight answer, and mainly the answer is no, because people have a constitutional right to life, and that supersedes your right to property. But I mean, you do have the right to self-defense and those things. So if people are looting, and lots of people are looting, you can't just open up with live ammunition. You need to think about things like paintball guns, pepper balls in paintball guns, rubber bullets for shotguns, beanbag rounds, even fireworks and crackers, firecrackers, anything that's non-lethal that can scare people off rather than killing them or seriously injuring them. If you can scare looters off, that's a victory. You don't have to kill them. It's just going to come back and bite you. They're going to say, you're part of a massacre, you are killing us, it's this, it's that, it's racism. It's always going to be racism, no matter what you do. So try and avoid try and avoid hurting and killing people, no matter how angry you may feel. If there's a non-lethal way to get the looters to go away, use it. So paintball guns, fireworks, even pellet guns and things like that. Just have a non-lethal option that you can use to keep people at a distance. If they then pull out real guns and start shooting, then by all means pull out your gun and respond. Or if things get really dangerous, use your firearm to protect yourself. But have the non-lethal option available. Okay guys, so lesson number 8 is beware fake news. When something like this happens, there's so many different groups on WhatsApp and that. You're trying to join these groups so that you know what's going on. Various prepper groups, community groups. And you will get a lot of fake news. We actually got a message that the attack was coming to Randfontein. This is it. So we were preparing ourselves to say, okay, are we going to go and protect? But we phoned some people who were closer to the supposed area that was closer to attack, and we said, so what's happening? And they're like, no, nothing. It's completely calm. It's completely calm. Nothing's happening. And this is the power of fake news. There's so many voice notes going around, fake messages. People, for some reason, love to make other people afraid. I'm not going to go into the psychology of this. This video is already running quite long. But you need to be able to verify your news. You need to be able to verify what's going on and not fall for fake news or for social media hype. You can get yourself all wound up and into a situation that's dangerous and that maybe you shouldn't be in because you believe something that wasn't true. So verify your news. Be courageous, but only against actual threats. Don't go running off the shadows. And beware fake news. Lesson number 9 is sudden supply shortages and panic buying. This is something that I learned that I wasn't really prepared for. You know, I was quite prepared in terms of armament and that kind of thing, firearms and body armor, that kind of thing. But I was caught with my pants down in terms of food and fuel supplies and those kinds of things. So what happened was, after all these malls had been burnt and factories had been looted and warehouses had been looted, along with the supply chain being disrupted on the roads, there were a few days, 2 or 3 days, where there were panic buying for bread and milk across the country. And even here in Randfontein, where there was not a single incident of rioting or looting, we ran out of bread and milk for about 2 days. Yes, there were other foods, you know, you could buy pasta and potatoes and that or whatever. But this I found really surprising and quite disturbing, really. How quickly things fall apart. Once again, you don't expect it. You kind of think, oh, I can go to the shop's just up the road. But if they don't get supplies from the bakers, if that supply line breaks down, and it can break down very easily, we've seen that these roads are very, very vulnerable, then you need to have if the supply line breaks down, you need to have supplies prepped and ready to to eat and drink, especially with fuel supplies as well. I know you can't store fuel for an indefinite amount of time, but always have as much fuel as you can store. Always have dry goods, dry foods, the whole prepper story. It's something I neglected, and it's something I really need to improve on if this happens again. We were lucky the disruptions were only 2 or 3 days, but if they had lasted a few weeks, we would have to be going around begging who's got food, who hasn't got food, and it's something I really want to improve on. Get my own prep up to date, get petrol, food supplies, dry goods, all of that, because things fall apart like this, and as soon as that supply chain is broken, everyone panic buys, and then the shelves are empty. And then finally, guys, number 10, the 10th and final lesson, well, not the final, the 10th lesson I learned from all of this, guys, is effective organization is key. I've said you need to stand up and organize, go to your neighborhoods, defend them, but you need to be able to communicate with the people in your neighborhoods. So you need to be on WhatsApp groups for the relevant town, community forums, police community forums, AfriForum, whatever the relevant civil organizations are in your town. You need to be able to communicate with those people so that when a threat appears, you can congregate in mass and deal with the threat. Because a thing like looting, the looters can congregate in mass somehow. I'm not 100% sure how, but through social media or whatever. They know when and where to be, and all of a sudden there's 500 people. So you need to be able to send out a message and respond with 500 people. So organization is key. Get yourselves organized, get your town organized, defend your town, stand up for yourselves. And if you like this video, guys, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.